Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is the 15 situational questions that you may find in a Scrum Master or Product Owner interview. I know for a fact that these often show up because I have been asked many of these questions, and I have, as an interviewer, asked a few of these questions for candidates. How people answer these questions is very important. Okay, now, what we are looking for is not the right answer. There may be multiple ways that you can answer these questions and do it adequately. But there are certain things that we're looking for, like how do you think? How do you apply agile principles and values to the answers? Do you tell people what the answers are, or do you guide them, ask questions, mentor them? What is your coaching stance? Although there may not be a right answer, there most definitely are wrong answers. And you'll notice that in my download that you can request, I'm going to give you, if you'll notice in the download, that I'm going to give you some suggestions for successful characteristics of an answer and wrong answers, right? Things that you could say that could really flub it up. And I want you to understand this is why it will flub it up. Okay? So, now these questions are pretty typical. Like I said, I've seen them. I've been asked these, and I've asked people these kinds of questions. Your homework, should you want to actually get better, will be to study each and every one of these questions, think about it, and write down a couple of answers. Okay, it doesn't have to be an entire paragraph, and it doesn't have to be a page, but it should be, a well thought out paragraph, succinct, okay, pithy, and it should follow the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. Okay? If you do this to all 15 of these, then I guarantee you it's like I'm giving you the answers to a couple of questions. You're going to get a couple of these or a variant of these in an interview. So you already know the type of thing you're going to be asked. Now, if they ask you a situational question that you're not prepared for, you can always ask for clarification. If you need, you got caught off guard and you say, I don't know how to answer that. Don't answer immediately. Say, I'm sorry, could you please rephrase that and allow me to understand what you're looking for? Now that buys you a few seconds to think. Start thinking about STAR, situation, task, action, and result, as they're asking the question, and begin to formulate a response around it. But most of these you should already know. These are not in any special order of how often they appear, although I will point out a couple that are really obvious. So the first one. Now you'll notice that they're open-ended. Listen to the way. It's not a yes or no question. That's very important. Tell me about an accomplishment you were very proud of and how you demonstrated servant leadership to your team. All right. The accomplishment part is important. Something that you accomplished, but also the servant leadership part is the other key phrase. It's not about you being the greatest person in the room, but how you served your team. Don't focus on accomplishment to the expense of the servant leadership. All right? Now, the explanation is that the interviewer is looking for specific examples of successful guidance for a team to make improvements. You really should have multiple examples for this one ready at any time. Try to use the word we as much as possible to demonstrate, if you're saying that I'm a servant leader and I'm serving the team and we did this as a team, then the word we should be in your vocabulary. Scrum Masters that say I all the time kind of indicate that they're not team players. Their ego is bigger than their willingness to serve the team. That is something I'm watching for. If every one of these questions come back, well, there was a time that I did this and then I did that and then the team responded and I got them to get better. And then I know that actually this guy's probably got a lot of ego and needs to feed the ego and probably doesn't like to be wrong, right? And likes to make sure the team knows he's right. And that can actually start to create conflict. So I'm looking for the word we. to emphasizing it was a team effort. Now, what would be a wrong answer? Not having an example ready. That would be a huge mistake. Well, I really can't think of an accomplishment. Whoops. Providing an explanation where the Scrum Master did not include the team in the solution, or described a solution that was kind of bullying or demanding compliance. Well, I told them they had to do it and they better get on it. I've actually heard this in interviews, guys. I told them that that was the expectation. Leadership said to do it, so they had to do it. That is the cheap way out. Look, I don't really like it, but they're telling us we have to do it. I have had a Scrum Master whose favorite phrase was, sorry, guys, I don't like to have to do it, but my boss is making me have you do this. We don't have you do things that aren't valuable. Your job is to help to lead the team to understand the value. And if you don't understand the value, you're not leading very well, are you? I'm going to give only a couple of examples. But remember STAR. What's the situation? I remember when I was working with my team in this type of place, okay, and they were really struggling with understanding story points. So I brought in a new technique that I created, and then I demonstrated this. We used a collaboration technique, and by the time we got done, they all understood it. And from then on, the points were meaningful, and we were able to accurately predict what we could complete in a sprint. And our predictability rate went from less than 50% up to 85 and 90%. See? STAR. All the way around. Now, I'm not going to do that on every one, but I might pick a couple. Please describe a process improvement that you knew the team needed to make, but they did not understand or appreciate. How did you convince them to try the improvement? So again, the concept here is you know it should be done. They are not aware of it, or they don't think it's important. What I'm looking for is how do you bring them around to it? Okay? A lot of people start by telling them what they have to do and why they have to do it. And sometimes that gets the team set up so that they don't want to do it. They start to resist. So there's other techniques, more advanced techniques that we'll talk about another time, so that we use some persuasion, some reason, and some gravitas, right? Your natural characteristic of leadership to guide the team to make the change, right? The good example is we'll have the interviewee demonstrating deep understanding of agility, the ability to use agile principles and values and explain why we do these things and how this will benefit us. Okay, and you're going to form persuasive arguments. That's what I'm looking for. Now, junior Scrum Masters often will say things like, well, this is what the Scrum Guide says, or this is the best practice, or like I mentioned before, guys, this is just what the boss wants us to do. I don't understand it either, but we have to do it. Okay? Not a good idea. That's not persuasive, and it doesn't make you look like an expert. In fact, it makes you look like, I'm a victim too, guys. Love me, feel sorry for me. Well, that's not what we're looking for here, all right? You need to be respected more than liked. Okay, that's an important. I'm going to repeat that. It's better to be respected than liked. Number 3, let's say your Scrum team feels like there are too many meetings and they want to eliminate at least one. How would you approach making a recommendation regarding the Scrum event? Okay. Warning, warning, warning. This is a trap. Okay, I have actually seen someone on YouTube who advised, just pick the one that you think you could get rid of and then have an explanation for why. We don't normally get rid of events, but it's okay. If they're asking you to pick one, get rid of one. Now, although it's very, very typical for Scrum teams to whine and complain about the number of hours that they spend in planning, a lot of that comes from the mindset of hands-on keyboard time is valuable. When I'm coding, that's when I'm happy. When I'm in a meeting and I have to talk to people and plan, that's not fun for me. So of course they complain about that because they would rather be at their desk coding than over here planning. The problem is that software is complex. You have to plan in order to be able to build it properly. You have to coordinate in order to avoid rework and defects. Therefore, planning and talking and understanding what to build, that's critical. You have to do that. It would be like a construction worker, carpenter, who wants to build your house but doesn't want to look at the plans. You wouldn't want that guy building your house. Imagine if it was a bridge now, or designing a jet. Would you want to get on that plane if they didn't want to take time planning out how to build that jet so that it wouldn't crash? Of course not. So the trick here is, are you one of those people who will knuckle under the pressure of the team and say, well, guys, what do you think we should get rid of? And they say, well, we don't really need the sprint review. Let's just do a demo and no sprint review. I see that a lot. Or, we could only do a retro like once a month instead of every sprint. Really? Now, like I said, I've seen people who make a recommendation, just pick one and make your good recommendation for why you would stop doing it. That's inadvisable. When Scrum in particular has a set of required meetings that are required for a reason. It's not just because the book says, it's because they've experimented. And I have experimented. I tell you, I've tried all these little experiments of what can we get rid of, and I've seen the mistakes. And I had to apologize and eat crow later on because it resulted in mistakes being made. So when you say we do Scrum, but we don't do that, right? We do Scrum, but we don't do sprint planning. Or we do Scrum, but we don't do sprint review. That's why we call it Scrum But. And it creates all sorts of problems. I would not recommend that you suggest eliminating a meeting. Okay? Better, right, is to remind them that the Scrum Guide has a very specific set of required meetings. Usually the Scrum Master is not empowered to modify the corporate run book and the Scrum practices, and that you would have to seek some advice from your manager and the Agile coach to see what could be done. An even better answer is, if you find that any of these meetings are not effective, can you please guide me on what I could do to be more effective? That shows both humility and openness and challenges them to say, give me some guidance here. If you think the sprint review is not effective, tell me how we can make it more effective. That engages them and makes them feel like they're a little bit more empowered to have an influence, and they may be willing to make changes without trying to eliminate meetings. All right, number 4. Please tell me about a time when you found problems with the backlog, such as poorly written stories, unclear acceptance criteria, unclear priorities, and steps you took to rectify the situation. Now, of course, I wrote this one because this is one that I would ask a Scrum Master or a product owner. You may find this with a couple of variations, but although here's what we're looking for here. Although generally the responsibility of managing the backlog is the product owner, the Scrum Master is there to be a partner and to help out. And they should be able to guide them and assist them, to help write the stories, to help organize the backlog, to make sure that they have all the fields filled out. But it's not uncommon for a senior product owner to have a junior Scrum Master and have to help guide the Scrum Master on how to be a better Scrum Master. Similarly, it is possible that a senior Scrum Master could have a junior product owner and need to coach the product owner. Now, how that is done is really important because you don't want to stomp all over the product owner or humiliate them or make them feel bad. So what we're looking for here is, how well did you do this without causing a lot of tension? Okay, making somebody feel insufficient. Describe how you have used your team Scrum or Kanban metrics to drive improvement conversations. Okay, this is going to be a really important one. It goes beyond just understanding the basics of velocity, burn-ups or burn-downs, okay? But let's say throughput, cycle time, all of these metrics together, predictability, are indicators of how well the engine is running, okay? I'm looking to see whether or not you can connect the dots. Do you know how velocity is calculated? Do you know what it means? Do you know what predictability is? Can you explain that to a team and help them to improve? Okay. A lot of times, again, certain Scrum Masters I've seen will state things about that metrics are gathered for management. Well, the managers make us do this. All right. These Scrum Masters could state some ambiguity about how velocity shows team performance, but that's not really accurate since velocity is not really a performance metric. Okay, it's used for predictability and for predicting what they're going to do, forecasting. Predictability is a performance metric, right? But velocity is not. A perceived lack of understanding between how changes in processes and behaviors results in changes in delivery would be considered a wrong answer. You've got to understand the connection, all right, between our behaviors result in certain metrics. Changes in behaviors change the metrics. So they're a lag metric, and we have to understand what is that interaction. What would you do if you were asked to guide your team to make an improvement you don't understand? All right, long and short of it, very simple. If you don't get it, ask. Demonstrate that you're willing to go find out what this means and how to teach it. It's that simple. Don't tell them, well, my manager wants you to do it. Okay? That's not an advanced technique. Let's say that an executive is comparing your team's velocity to that of another team and makes disparaging remarks about how your team's velocity is not as high. This is upsetting the team. What types of steps do you think you're going to take? All right. Again, this question is looking for the ability to be discreet, politically savvy, show good judgment, some discretion, some tact. We know that the leader should not be using metrics to compare teams. How you guide that leader to understand that will determine how effective you are as a Scrum Master. Okay? So the best response is going to demonstrate deep understanding of why the individual team metrics shouldn't be used to compare teams. All right? But it'll be done in a way which is politically savvy, very careful. Now, the wrong answer would be ignoring it, saying, well, I went and told the coach that he should talk to him about it. Well, maybe. Or just ignoring it. Impulsively challenging the executive, somewhat unwise. Even if you're right, you can still end up crushed. So you got to be really, really careful. There are ways and ways, right? What would you do if you had a stakeholder call you who was really upset and they wanted to know, how you can solve their problem? This happens all the time. Again, it's just how do you show some empathy? How do you relate to them? How do you negotiate with them? And sometimes how do you say, well, not right now? Or are you the kind of person that automatically gives the customer or stakeholder what they want? That probably isn't good. Maybe by contrast, you say, no, forget it. Pound sand, we're not doing it. That's also not good. So there's good ways of solving this problem. Number 9, it is somewhat common to have a team member who is openly skeptical or resistant to the Agile process. Describe strategies and tactics you have used in the past to handle this situation. Okay, look, you are often going to be helping developers who've been doing this for, sometimes longer than you've been alive, to be quite frank. When I started off, there were guys who've been developers for 30 years, and I was only, 25 or 26 years old, and I was coming in there, and right? So you got to be real careful about that. Now, like I said, they can be very experienced and still be wrong, or at least the techniques that they used are now outdated. We found better ways of doing things. Okay? So how you do this will make a big difference. All right? Successful candidates are going to have specific examples of how they met with skeptical team members and won them over. And if you can demonstrate how you turn them into allies and change agents, even better. I just recently had a guy super skeptical. He's about ready to retire. His wife won't let him retire, but he's been doing software development for 35 years, and he wasn't into this Agile thing. And so I started, kind of joking with him and talking to him and meeting with him and asking him, well, what do you like? What don't you like? And then I started kind of teasing and including him, and I'd ask him questions. What do you think about this? How do you feel about this? And over time, he became actually very interested in it. And then he actually became one of our best allies. Now he speaks up more than anyone else on the team, and he's very supportive. We want him over. Number 10, please describe an instance in which there's strong disagreement or conflict on the team. What did you do to resolve it? So look, conflict is natural. This is a great phrase. Lack of conflict does not prove harmony. It may reveal apathy. Okay? Mature leaders know how to harness creative energy. and then find creative solutions to the problems without letting it become personal. Okay, separate the task from the person, the solution from the person. Junior leaders might ask to be moved to another team to avoid the conflict, or report the person to human resources. So any answer that demonstrates an unwillingness to try and help or trying to avoid the situation, those would be a wrong answer or a failure. Number 11. Have you ever identified gaps in your Agile knowledge, and what plans have you taken to fill those gaps? Okay. This is really simple. The concept is demonstrate that you have some humility, that you're willing to learn. You identify that there are things you don't know, and you do something about it. All right? That's it. That's it. Number 12, tell me about a failure you had in the past and what you learned from this. All right, look, we all make mistakes. It's okay to make a mistake as long as you don't make the same stupid mistake over and over again. In Agile, we say, if you're going to fail, fail fast. That means if you're going to make a mistake, do it early, learn from it, and improve. We also say that FAIL stands for first attempt in learning. Again, make a mistake and learn from it. Don't repeat the same mistake over and over again. Now, your answer needs to demonstrate that you are willing to learn from your mistakes. That's the key part. You're also humble enough to admit you made a mistake. Number 13, please tell me about a time in which you have worked closely with an Agile coach. How do you feel about receiving coaching? All right. Look, not everybody, you don't know everything. Even the coach doesn't know everything. But if they're in a coaching position, it's probably because they've been doing this for a while and they've demonstrated deep knowledge, and they probably have some tricks you don't have. Now, great coaches will also admit that they can learn from you. But in the meantime, if you're not open to coaching, I would hesitate to hire you. All right? Even if I was just a hiring manager and not an Agile coach, if I found someone who says, I don't like getting coached, I've had an employee who said he was open to it, and then after he got hired, said he didn't like to get coached. There were things he never learned to do after that. All right, he never learned how to help the team vertically slice stories. He couldn't and wasn't willing to help them to reduce their story size. They often had too much WIP, okay, work in progress, and they were very unstable. All right, their predictability was not acceptable. He needed coaching, but he wouldn't accept it because it made him feel bad. Well, that's too bad. Your job is to learn and to get better. Now to the last two questions. If you're tasked with explaining a difficult project to your team, how would you organize yourself and your materials so that you would successfully align the team to the effort? Okay. The idea here is that you have some experience creating materials to guide the team. This could be product roadmaps, better backlog items, empathy maps, process diagrams, use case diagrams, collaboration boards, whatever. Have examples of this stuff ready for your interview, right? That'll be in one of my videos about preparing for the interview. Have examples open and ready to go. All right, now, wrong answer is passing the buck to somebody else. Oh, that's the product owner's job. That's the lead developer. That's the architect's job. No. It's okay to show that you got them involved so that they can answer the product questions or the technical development or the architectural questions, but you need to show that you got everyone together, organized it, and facilitated it. That's your role. Okay, the last question. What do you think is the best way to explain complex topics to team members or clients who don't understand the technical details of the project? Very similar concept. All right, bring the right people together, create diagrams, visual models, wireframes, whatever it takes. The last question is number 16 about how do you handle a situation where you're waiting on other team members. Again, this just gets to paying attention and being proactive to make sure that you have the right people in the room to help eliminate the issue, and don't allow your team members to hide their impediments. Okay. You've got to be paying attention and making sure that if you're dependent upon this, you're asking questions. What do you need? When can you have that done? What do you need to do that a little bit faster? We need that by Tuesday. If you had Bob come over and help you, would that work? Okay. You're looking for solutions. Don't just say, can you have it by Tuesday? No. All right. Well, I guess we can't have it due by Tuesday. No. How do you work with them to see what can be done? Could somebody else come over and help code? Maybe the problem is with the testing. Maybe the problem is with the data. All right. Well, how do we solve that problem? Okay. So there you go. 15 situational questions and some thoughts around it. You know what to do. Follow those instructions. Go practice and record yourself answering these until you have it down pat. And your interview process will improve and you'll get more jobs. Better paying.